Hi, it's Rich Tehrani here. We're in the TMC newsroom and we are at the Cloud Expo 2010 in New York at the Jacob Javits Center. Thanks for tuning in. On our program today is Jason Liu, who's with Univa UD. Jason, how are you?
Well, thank you very much, Rich. Glad to be here.
I think it was a year ago or so that we sat down and talked last. And could you refresh our viewers' memory on a little bit about your company, please?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, Univa UD is one of the leading providers of cloud systems management software. We target two areas. One is the service provider space, where we enable public clouds for big service provider customers. We also target enterprises and helping them with their private clouds and then on-ramping onto public clouds.
Now, you'd predicted that there'd be a tremendous amount of growth in the space in the past, and we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. So how do you feel about prediction?
I think when you and I talked, Rich, last year, it was a lot of buzz, but there wasn't actually a lot of tangibility to the market. I think what's been interesting is not just the fact that cloud is here and real money is being spent, but I think it's also been the sequencing. What we talked about previously was that initially you would see a number of service providers rush out with public clouds, and that would spur internal private clouds be built because internal IT had to react to a lot of the competitive pressures that they're feeling from service providers. And I think we're seeing that right now with obviously a lot of announcements of most of the large service providers now entering the cloud space. You're now seeing internal IT having to respond to that with private clouds. And so that in and of itself is kind of driving this kind of excitement around cloud.
And how are you helping your customers in this space?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so what we provide is the complete end-to-end software stack that you need for rolling out a cloud infrastructure. So if you think about the 5 major components that you need to roll out a cloud management stack, you need provisioning, you need monitoring, all optimized for a cloud environment. You also need a self-service portal, and then you need scheduling, and then what we call resource management or SLA automation. And so we are the only company of all the cloud systems management providers that have the complete stack. Most of them are fairly new, and so they focus primarily on provisioning and monitoring, while we're more established, more mature, and so we're able to provide the entire stack.
And how are you seeing the market in terms of growth from a carrier versus enterprise perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, we actually did a webinar with Intel, and we had almost 500 plus service providers that participated in the webinar. And around 67% of service providers are rolling out now or over the next 6 months cloud infrastructure as a service offerings. So it tells you that roughly 2/3 of service providers now are rolling out clouds. The challenge in that market is that they're initially smaller footprints. I think there's a hesitancy for a service provider to want to commit in a big way until they start seeing demand. So what we're seeing is a lot of quantity in the service provider space, but the larger deal sizes are coming from enterprises and private clouds, because that's really where we see some of the more immediate cost savings being for an enterprise.
Interesting. So in terms of international versus domestic growth, are you seeing any trends there?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty significant frequent flyer, so I've crossed all 3 continents over the last 6 months and many times. So what we're seeing is certainly the U.S., in our opinion, having by far the strongest demand around cloud. In the Europe area, you're starting to see pockets of interest in service providers and private clouds, but not as heavy as in the U.S. And in the Far East, it's actually even further behind. You are seeing some of the large telcos like KDDI and others that have announced some cloud offerings. What we're seeing it really is the U.S., the cloud market is here. It's happening now. In the Europe, it's a little bit farther behind, but I think you're only talking 3 to 6 months. I think in Asia, you're looking at probably 6 to 12 months. But it's clearly a worldwide phenomenon that's going on. So.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest trend then in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, kind of the interesting question is, why do you adopt cloud? What are the reasons that you adopt cloud? So I was in a CIO panel where we had 25 CIOs of some very large companies that come, and there are 3 predominant reasons that people are deploying clouds. One is what people talk about is the difference between peak usage and norm usage driving very strong ROI. So when you have large compute environments that require bursting of scale, you can save that by moving to the cloud. A second reason was something I hadn't thought of, which was around speed of deployment. A lot of times people get frustrated with their internal IT, so they use the cloud as a quicker way to deploy SAP or something like that. But the last one was probably the most interesting one, which was a lot of the CIOs said the reason they're interested in cloud is because it's happening without them. Much like handhelds when everyone bought BlackBerries and IT refused to support them, that's happening with cloud. A lot of individual users are going onto Amazon, putting up company proprietary and confidential information up on Amazon, and so internal IT realizes they have to get control of this. Otherwise, it's going to happen with or without their cooperation. So those are kind of the big trends that we're seeing that's driving cloud adoption.
And so what's next for your company other than capitalizing on some of those trends?
Yeah, I mean, so if we look how Univa's positioned, we are definitively the leader, or at least one of the top leaders in this space, especially if you're a service provider. It's even a smaller universe of folks that can help really get you to market. And the way that we're going to market is that our strategy is to obviously focus on the service provider space and then focus on the private clouds. But the ultimate goal is to be able to provide a seamless solution across private, public, and service providers where the same workload is going to be run in the same consistent way across all of those various things. Because our belief is the walls are going to break down between what workloads are running between service providers, what workloads are private clouds, and what are hybrids or bursting scenarios. And so our ability to run seamlessly across all three of those environments in the same consistent, uniform way is clearly an area of differentiation for us. So
it's fantastic. Well, thanks for being on the program, Jason. That was great.